y'all, it's Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we're going to be starting into a reading vlog for the Dungeons and Book Dragons Readathon. All right, so before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. And you got to tell me in the comments, are you partaking in the Readathon? What team are you on? And how is it going for you so far? I'm helping host this awesome readathon that is based on D&D, spearheaded by Ivy over at the Geek Goddess. I'll have links to all of the co-hosts in the description down below. Please go give everybody a follow. So we have a different quest every 5 days, and we want to do our best to try and complete the quest so that we can get XP points for our team. I am spearheading the Rogues team, the best team, and we now know the first quest we have is to read a book that either introduces you to a new world or starts a new series. And I'm kind of have a book that does both of those with The Unbroken by 𝗖cie 𝗁𝘁. This worked out so well. I've had this book on my own TBR for a while now because it was one of the quintessential high fantasy sapphic stories that I knew about and had been wanting to get to it. I was already hoping to try and get this read for my in-person fantasy book club this month, where our prompt is to read a book that has a rebellion in it. And for the Rogues team, we get bonus points if we read a book that has a morally gray main character or love interest, a heist, thieves, or rebels, and a rebellion would require rebels. Worked out so well. Oh my gosh. Not only that, but we also get bonus points based on the amount of pages we're reading. And this one is almost 500 pages. So that's gonna help too. I am a little nervous to try and crank through this book in 5 days. I'm not gonna even try to front with you. I'm really gonna do my best for pretty much every book I read this month to have it in 2 formats. One of those hopefully being audio. So I do have the audiobook of this one checked out from my library, and then obviously I do own a physical copy. So I'm really gonna try and double down on either reading physically or on audio through one book at a time so I can crank through them a little bit faster. There are also different side quests for every main quest that we can try and complete as well to get even more points for our team. And so I already have a side quest lined up. I know I'm crazy, trust me. I am currently eyeing The Midnight Girls by 𝗖cie heç𝘁𝗰𝘁, which is a book that honestly I probably should have read by now. It is on my 10 books for 2025 list. And one of the side prompts has a celebration being included in the story. And so this one is actually set during a festival where these 2 women who are both witches, and they go down into the village during this festival, but sort of end up in a competition with one another for the heart of the prince. But pretty sure they're going to end up wanting one another's hearts instead. But I think this one will also take a sapphic turn. So that felt kind of perfect to pair it with The Unbroken, but also the audiobook of this one is only 9 hours. So that's pretty short. But really, the biggest thing is, am I going to be able to finish this book in 5 days? I don't know. We'll find out together. Hello, my loves. Happy Sunday. Honestly, I did not really start into this challenge at all yesterday. So we've already sacrificed 1 day, a shame. But I have officially started into The Unbroken by 𝗖cie 𝗁𝘁𝗁 now. I have listened to a little bit of the audio while I'm working down my to-do list because way too long. But I'm already about 50 pages in, and so I kind of am getting a feel for the world we have. We have Terrain, who is a woman that was basically taken from a enemy country, forced into being a soldier. She now actually has a rank of lieutenant, and she is one of the few soldiers who has no real love lost for having left her home country because she doesn't remember it. She was a child. At this point, she sees the current country she lives in as the one that has given her her life, her opportunities, even though she is still treated quite poorly because of being born in this neighboring country. She still honestly is kissing ass more often than not. But on the opposite side, we have Luca, who is the princess, and she doesn't really agree with how her uncle is currently ruling and is actually doing what she can to try and possibly take him down and take the throne for herself. And I can't quite get a hold of whether or not she is doing this for, actually good reasons because she disagrees with how her uncle is ruling, or if it's more of a power grab and just that she doesn't believe her uncle should be in power because her father is the one that I think once was king. But one of the main issues that I am really liking is the fact that this country, which is been colonized and looked down upon, they actually have religious beliefs. They believe in these gods, and magic has been referenced, but we haven't actually seen any magic take place. So I don't know if they're saying magic because they don't believe in gods and like their mythology, or if they're saying magic because there's actual magic because it's a fantasy world. I don't know. But one way or another, it's religious themes going on in the story, and I do tend to really love those, especially in my fantasy books. So right now, Terrain is hoping to maybe end up taking over her own battalion in this neighboring country and kind of being able to show the people that if they work with the colonizing country, they, won't be punished. They can actually make a good job for themselves, good names for themselves. But then, of course, the whole fact of the matter is they're being colonized and forced into this, especially because they're being forced to turn their backs on their faith. Really liking the setup thus far. I'm not super far in. Again, only like 50 pages. I've had a rather busy day. Had a Buns and Roses meeting this morning, which was great, but lots of talking, lots of working. And then since I've been home, I've been doing my best to work down my to-do list. So I've filmed a whole bunch, and now I'm hoping to officially finish that out. I do have to work on some editing, so I won't really be able to read too much more, but I will continue to listen to the audiobook whenever I get the chance. Stick with working this baby down. That's the hope at the very least. I am so tired and don't feel like figuring out a way to clip this onto my shirt successfully. But hey guys, I have made a very shockingly ambitious decision, kind of just like spur of the moment. I don't know what bug bit me to put me in this reading mindset, but I am gonna try this 75 booked challenge that I've been seeing make its way around my For You page. I've seen a few bigger creators doing this, and basically it's just like a life challenge to reprioritize reading and get you back in the zone. And I feel like that's what I've been needing lately. And I don't know, it's so funny because even just partaking in this readathon, I really believed was going to get me back in that reading mindset, but it just still wasn't really happening until, like I said last night, I just made the conscious decision. I'm going to do this 75 book thing and I'm going to start it tomorrow. So this morning, I continued on with The Unbroken by C.L. Clark, and I really did my best to read as much as possible today. I mean, that's not even really what the 75 booked challenge is about. Instead, that is to read like for 2 45-minute sprints throughout the day. For me personally, I'm saying that rather than it be one of them can't be laying in bed, one of them has to be eyeball reading. I not only started into the audiobook of this morning and knocked out my first 45-minute sprint, I also read it on my lunch break, and then I kind of just like kept listening to the audiobook as much as possible. I did have a rather busy work day, but thankfully when I had the ability to put on something, I did keep reading. And so now I am actually pretty freaking far into this book, even though I was only at like 60 pages yesterday. So I have now read about 210 pages of this today. This is the bug I needed. The fact that I'm enjoying this book is definitely helping keep me invested and keep me pushing through and just keep this reading momentum that I need. I don't know. I feel back on my mojo. I don't want to say that too loud. I don't want to jinx this. It's literally the first day. Who knows? Maybe I could talk about this in 3 days and it's going to be a whole different story. I have no idea. But for the very least, we're starting out strong today. And now I have a lot more solid feel for where the plot is going. We see Terrain is very much in a complicated scenario where she's a conscripted soldier, except her homeland is being colonized. She is forced to live this life. And even though she has this life, she is still looked down upon for having it and looked down upon by her peers that also come from this neighboring country, the ones who are at the same level as her because of their race. And yet she just keeps on pushing through, is determined to make something of herself, to make something of her life. And it puts her in this really complicated situation of like, which is worse, being a victim and having nothing, but at the very least, like standing on your ethics and morals, or being a victim and having something, consistently turning your back on your ethics and morals. It's a really complicated situation she is in. And unfortunately, it's very much a no-win scenario. And pretty quickly we see, though she saves Luca, the princess's life, she still gets turned on when she's sort of framed up for being responsible for a fellow soldier's passing. Even though it's really shoddy investigation, it seems way too easy, and there's like so many holes that could be punched in the story. They don't really care because she's a sand. She's looked down upon for her race. She's looked down upon for being conscripted. Again, though, this is the only life she's ever led. But because at the very start of the book, she did interfere with an assassination attempt on Luca's life. She's kind of able to call in this favor that Luca sort of offhandedly agreed to. And she did not, we see from Luca's perspective, and she did not think anything of it. But now it's kind of worked out so well in her favor because Luca is determined to have a spy in the rebellion that is taking place in this country. And it's kind of this also complicated area for Luca where it's like, on one hand, she does want to help these people, she does want to change things, but on the other hand, it's one of those where you have a common goal, but like they're going about it in very different ways. And the empire Luca comes from is a colonizer. They're taking over all of these neighboring countries, but along with that, they also do not believe in religion or magics, and so they're really repressing those faiths of the neighboring countries, shun magic. They think of it as something dirty and unworthy. Whereas Luca has a different perspective. She thinks magic could actually be very useful, utilizing it outside of a faith context. You guys know I love religious themes in my fantasy stories, so I'm really intrigued as like, where is that gonna go? And now that Terrain is getting more involved in the rebellion, we are seeing that there is a magic user. I think I mentioned in my prior update, I wasn't really sure if the magic was going to be like actual magic or if it was really just like faith-based stuff. No, there is magic. We just have not really seen much of it because Terrain and Luca come from this country that, again, looks down on it, sees it as a bad thing, and is doing everything they can to repress it. So I'm really intrigued to see more of it and also see how it plays in with their faith. I really would love that. The dynamic that's developing between Terrain and Luca is very interesting. They're both attracted to women. I knew this was sapphic going in. I mean, that was definitely one of the big draws for me, honestly. But I didn't immediately feel a connection there. However, I really like that we've seen a friendship building, and now we're like kind of scratching the surface of something romantic, but it's still very slow moving, and there's still all of these walls up because of the complicated situation of just who they are and the world they live in. And I really like seeing all of those be incorporated into the different interactions that they have. It's allowing for this really delightfully complicated relationship that they have, and seeing the dynamic play out is just so entertaining and getting me really invested and very engrossed and so intrigued as like, where's it going to go next? What's the next step going to be? And like, how are they going to reach it? There's also some other interesting relationship dynamics that are being explored as well in regards to family, because on both sides they have very complicated family situations. So Luca, we know from the get-go, her father has passed. He used to be the king, and now her uncle is in power, and he loves having the power, but he doesn't really have much of a spine. He isn't really standing up for anything. It's just kind of, what does he have to do to stay in this place? And Luca, on the opposite side, is a strategist. She is very brilliant. Unfortunately, she suffered an accident when she was a child, so she has a bad leg, and so there is some chronic pain rep going on there. And because of that, she feels like she has to rely more on her mind to strengthen herself, and is doing everything possible to try and showcase everyone around her that she is going to be a better leader than her uncle is, but she's still at the whims of her uncle because he is the king right now. On the opposite side, honestly, Terrain also has a very interesting familial dynamic, but I can't get into it because of spoilers, and oh my god, it pains me because it's so titillating, honestly. Yeah, so this is going really well. Technically, I need to finish it by midnight tomorrow. Do I think I can do that? I'm honestly not really sure. So on that note, I'm gonna go get ready for bed and hopefully, maybe, read some more. We'll see. Hey y'all, so we are on the last day of the first quest, and oh my gosh, I really didn't know if it was gonna happen, but I did officially finish out The Unbroken by 𝗖cie Ich𝗁𝘁. Honestly, I basically started listening to the audiobook of this one this morning and did not stop until I absolutely had to, because this took me on such a freaking roller coaster ride. Honestly, this is one of those fantasy books where like it really develops a lot from where you start out. And so I really, really enjoyed it. Overall, like the base synopsis I have given is all you really need to know to go in, because that definitely is a constant element of the story, is this back and forth between Luca and Terrain, and really love Terrain's character. I think she's definitely not the brightest bulb in the pack, but like she's a character you just have to root for, and you really want her to succeed and like want her to do her best and want her to like manage a way to a happily ever after for not only herself but like the people she cares about. Whereas on the opposite side with Luca, oh my god, I have such conflicting feelings about her. I think the way she is written is done in such a way that it showcases the complexity of her character, which is very impressive when it comes to Clark's writing of her. But yeah, so my feelings of her are not cut and dry. They are definitely weird. I really, really liked how the story just evolved. Like I said, took me on a roller coaster ride. It goes like this in terms of emotions, in terms of the like plot and the action. There's definitely some pretty gory descriptions in this at points. I don't want to say this is one of those where like nobody you like is safe, because it's not quite that dramatic, but there's a lot of characters who do not make it to the end, honestly. And there's so many like cliffhangery moments too, which definitely just kept me driving forward. Like I said, did not want to stop listening to this. When I did pick it up to read physically on my lunch break, I also was just like driving through it because so good. I had so many external reactions that I just could not stop from coming out because I was having such a wild time with this and some of the events that took place. Where this book ends is not at all where I thought we were going to from how the story lays out at the beginning. Honestly, even for like half of the roller coaster ride, I would not have expected this to be the ending. That being said, it has me very intrigued for what is going to happen next in this series. I don't think I mentioned this in any of my prior updates, but pretty quickly I picked up on the fact that it's very clear the Bellarine country, which is the colonizing country, pretty French. Like it's maybe not a one-to-one, but it's definitely French. And then on the opposite side with 𝗖cie, it definitely feels like it is supposed to be reminiscent of Northern Africa. And so there's certain elements in the characters and like the culture that we learn about 𝗖cie that I wonder like if the author took inspiration from certain countries, particularly from North Africa, because we have not seen all of the countries that we know to exist in this world yet. And obviously there are 2 more books. So it's possible like this maybe was directly influenced by, I don't know for a fact, but say like the French occupation of Morocco. And perhaps in some of the future books, we'll see their impact on some of the neighboring countries as well. And that's another element that has me very intrigued, because I do really like when authors take inspiration from historical elements to tie into their fantastical worlds, and really, really enjoyed that. The religious part, I did continue to like. I wish it would have been a little bit more at the forefront, but because of how some things happen in the climax, I'm a little curious if perhaps it'll be more prevalent in the sequels. So I'm very, very excited. Like I said, definitely really enjoyed this and going to continue reading it. Very good. Really glad I finally got around to reading this one. So officially finished this baby, which was quest 1. Took me too long, but it's fine. Given the fact that the next quest drops tonight, meaning the side quests will also change, I don't think I could actually finish another novel, but one of the side quests is to read a short book, a graphic novel, a manga. And so I think I'm going to try my best to squeeze in volume 14 of Library Wars by Kuro Yumi tonight, unless I just have needed to continue on with this series and haven't touched it in a few months now, honestly. So if I can do that, it's a quick read and also would get me some extra points for my team. So at least we're actually making some progress now, hopefully. I guess we'll see how that goes when the next quests are dropped and whether or not I have any sort of a good plan, because I have a bit of a plan, but I had a plan going into the first quest and that pretty quickly got thrown out the window, so. Hey y'all, so happy Wednesday. It feels like this week is going by really quickly. Wanted to go ahead and talk to y'all because first off, I did officially read volume 14 of Library Wars last night, and I did like this. Lots of excitement happening as far as the plot goes when it comes to the library task force fighting against censorship. Basically, this author is being threatened that he will not be able to write anymore because the Media Betterment Committee has deemed him as too much of a risk for writing about things that they consider like problematic. And so of course the task force is trying to protect him, but along the way we get some final like actual development around the romance between Kashahara and Dojo, and actually kind of an acknowledgement of the amount of time this story has taken place over 8 years since they first interacted. So I think that's like 3 years since the start of the series. So it's cool to acknowledge that and kind of see how far Kashahara in particular has really grown. And then there were some good little bits of exploration around Dojo's character on the opposite side. So I really liked this one. I literally only have 1 volume left and then I will officially be finished with this series. I did also want to talk about, I forgot to mention yesterday that we had our first random encounter. And so these are kind of just additional little activities that we can partake in. They're totally random. It's up to Ivy as to when they come. And so I believe we were like fighting some sort of a worm creature and you had to roll a d6. And then based on your roll, you had different activities you could do. So I, of course, ended up rolling a 1. And so for that, it was to post a meme around a reading slump. And given the fact that I had just gotten over a reading slump, my response felt pretty apt, honestly. But today I officially started into The Midnight Girls by 𝗖cie heç𝘁𝗰𝘁. I have listened to a lot of the audiobook on this one over the day. I started like first thing when I got up this morning. Usually when I work from home, I don't have as long of a morning routine, but I still listened to this as much as I could. And then I listened to some more of it while I was working. Obviously I have it on my Kobo, so I read it over my lunch break and then ended up going on a walk by myself. So I listened to even more of it, continued when I made dinner. And so I actually should have a better estimate of how far in, because I'm way further than I was when I last read it on my Kobo. Okay, here we go. I think I'm in chapter 23. So I'm about 64% in, actually. Really liking this. And we follow these 2 witches, but there are actually 3 of them. And so they work for these 3 witch sisters. And so there's the red yaga, the black yaga, and the white yaga. Morning, midday, and midnight. And so that's kind of their names for the 3 young women that we follow. And they are actually like the servants and monsters for the witches, but in themselves have witch abilities. All 3 of them at different points have to try and get the hearts of princes to bring back to the witches. They feed on these, and like based on the traits of the prince, it like affects the heart and therefore affects different abilities. But now the 3 servants are like teenager age and are all sent after the same prince, who is supposed to be the most pure of heart in a very long time. So his heart is particularly powerful. So we alternate back and forth between Marinka, who is midday, and 𝗖cie, I think, 𝗖cie, who is midnight. And those 2 in particular have constantly been competing because Marika really wants to showcase to Red Yaga that she is like so powerful, and she wants to do this as a way to like showcase to Red Yaga her thanks for saving her life and for giving her these abilities. While on the opposite side, 𝗖cie basically has gotten so fed up of doing this for Black Yaga that she actually wants the heart for herself to try and get her own power and free herself from this. Things are a little bit more complicated. They are going to this city in the middle of this giant festival. So though they are trying to get the prince's attention so they can lure him away and take his heart, they have a lot of competition. There's all these other young women and men trying to also get the prince's attention, trying to seduce him. And it's kind of some fun interactions. Then we also see a little bit around like the prince's history. And I really like the back and forth between Marinka and 𝗖cie. It feels very similar, but it's very much like they're 2 sides of the same coin kind of thing. So yeah, I'm like blasting through it. I'm actually really liking this, and that's worked out really well because the rogue team actually ended up having our first monster attack this afternoon. So for this, we have to try and read at minimum 300 pages in 48 hours. And if everybody on the team does that, then we can take down the monster, and that'll get us some extra XP points. So we're doing our best. Like I said, I'm cranking through this, and it is over 300 pages, I believe. Then I do have a plan to try and pick up the last volume of Library Wars for one of the side quests. If I manage to finish this like either tomorrow morning on audio, then I'm going to take this with me for lunch to try and read it physically, because these are usually around 200-ish pages, so that's some more pages added as well. Hey y'all, so officially closing out this first, I was gonna say quest vlog, but technically this is like midway through the second quest, but it's basically hitting the point of a full weekly reading vlog now, so I think it's time to officially wrap this baby up. I did officially finish out The Midnight Girls, which was the book I was reading for main quest 2, and I did like this one. I actually really enjoyed how this book ended up closing out. I think the author actually did a really great job of making it feel true to the story that had been established thus far, but also ending on a note that was surprising. Like, I didn't really expect this to be the ending, and I really liked that. I also just loved the character growth we saw both of the young women go through, and then I think it's really impressive that given the fact we don't actually see through the eyes of either Prince or his best friend slash mortal enemy, that there's still enough there in the subtext for you to understand, and the side plot that's going on around this prince, his country, the war they are trying to fight, all of that, even though it's not really central to the story, it establishes the setting and adds into the world itself so well. Like, the author really did a solid job with this here. It is actually inspired by Polish history. Yeah, I'm really glad I finally got around to this one. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to try and crank through something else relatively quickly, and so I decided to pick up the final volume of Library Wars by Yumi, and I read this one for, I think it was side quest 6, or read a book that was inspirational or give you a new insight. And given the fact that the main premise of this entire series is fighting against censorship, I would definitely say that is inspirational. Really liked this one. It closes out so cute. The only complaint I have is that there's not a more, I guess I'll say, official ending for the side romance that kind of stole my heart. As for the main couple though, super cute. Plot around fighting against censorship was great, and I really like the little nods to the development because there is a bit of a time skip at the end. Really glad I officially finished this one out. Very much enjoyed it, and it's so apt right now with the topics. Highly recommend this series, but at the same time, it is definitely a manga series of its time. I did try to read Off the Map by Trish Doller kind of on a whim. This was an audiobook that I could easily get my hands on, and I figured it would be another one that would be rather fast. What was it I used this for? I think Side Quest 1, where it was like a book you could get lost in, given the fact that the main story is around these two characters basically just like getting lost on a travel to the man's brother is getting married, and so they're like traveling through the Irish countryside and kind of take all these detours, some fun adventures along the way. I didn't really like this one. I ended up DNFing it because it just felt way too insta-love, and that is really not my thing. And unfortunately, I just recently read another romance book that had insta-love, and I pushed through on that one, but I just wasn't feeling it for this. The chemistry was not there. It felt like the focus was more on really writing spicy scenes, which is something that was not especially integral in the prior 2 of the series. I felt like the author did a much better job establishing the characters and kind of building them out, exploring the complicated traumas they have worked through, and seeing how those are impacting the relationships that they're developing in the story. But this one, I was not feeling it at all. Not to mention the fact I just didn't really like the female main character. We're following Carla, who is kind of the honorary third Beck sister, since the series is called The Beck Sisters. And so she is actually traveling to Ireland because the main character from the first book is getting married. The groom's brother is going to meet her when she arrives in Ireland and take her to the wedding venue. But they pretty immediately end up hitting it off. He's kind of like the really straight-laced, does what he's told, has this stereotypical, like really adult, everything's together lifestyle, but he's not happy. Whereas on the opposite side, Carla is a bartender during like the tourist season in Florida, and then whenever it's not that time, she basically spends all of her money traveling. And she picks this up from her father, who now is suffering from dementia. And so there's kind of a little bit of that traumatic background being explored there. Unfortunately, I just didn't really like Carla. She was too abrasive, especially when Eam was opening himself up and being emotionally vulnerable with her. And she just, I don't know, it was just grating to me how she would respond to that. As I said, her father has dementia, and though he told her that he doesn't want her to see his deterioration, she hasn't seen him in person for like 5 years. And I literally cannot fathom that. I don't care what your dad said. Like, how are you doing this? I don't get it. So yeah, I ended up not finishing that one. So technically I completed it for the first side prompt, but I only get half points since I didn't finish it, obviously. And then lastly, I really didn't know where I wanted to go next. So I actually let the dice decide for me and ended up once again rolling a 6. So I needed to read another book that was inspirational or gave me a new insight. And I figured this would kind of be a good opportunity to pick up a nonfiction book. I had downloaded Witches, Midwives, and Nurses by Barbara Unrick and Deirdre English from Kobo Plus a while back. This is a really short history of women healers. I think it initially was actually a pamphlet that was published in the 70s, but they sort of republished it about, I think, 10 years ago now and added to it. There's a new introduction that kind of expands upon how things have changed, this shift that we are now seeing from when women were really pushed out of the medical field or really only seen in nurse roles. And now obviously there are higher numbers of doctors who are women. And along with that, this return to a more holistic approach with medicine that women tend to utilize more than male doctors. I did also appreciate the fact that they were aware of some of the issues with the original texts that they published and kind of pointed out how sometimes they were like either too broad or we're talking in like a generalization. And then other times it seemed as though they were talking in absolutes when obviously that was not the case. But I still really enjoyed it overall. I thought it was really interesting deep diving into how women used to be seen as the healers, the ones who were more knowledgeable about medicine and bodies and recovery. But then the honestly like capitalist, classist, and sexist shift into men being the ones in these roles and how medicine ended up becoming a professional industry. Really fascinating. And there were a lot of references to other materials that I definitely want to look into more. I really don't know that much about the history of medicine, but after reading this little book, I definitely want to start learning more about it. It was so fascinating. So with that, I did officially finish out that side quest as well. All in all, honestly, from how this reading vlog started, I've actually done a really good deal of reading. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I read 5 books and I DNF'd 1. Very unexpected. I really thought The Unbroken was gonna take me down for the entire time, but I managed. I'm so proud of myself. All right, and on that note, that is officially it for today, y'all. So thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let's leave a stethoscope emoji in the comments. I have links to all of my socials as well as a few ways you can support me down in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!